It is In Between the Pages with James Lott Jr. I know it sounds dirty because we go in between. We're going in between pages. That's right. We talk about what people do when they write books, screenplays, songs. And we have an author, but he's more than just that. I mean, he's put out several books, of course. His new book out, we'll talk about that. But he's also, I was reading this. He is, okay, it's almost like Susan Lucci. He is a 5-time Publicist Guild America nominee. 5
I
times.
finally won, like Susan Lucci. I finally won. It just took 5 tries.
As I said, I was gonna say, you're just like Susan Lucci. Got it. You probably cried. Okay. Was recognized as International Media Journalist of the Year. This is not some lightly, folks. There's a lot of journalists out there, a lot of media journalists out there. So to get that it's amazing. He also did the Cabaret Awards, which I've heard of also, and including as you know, I did all these books that come out. But his latest book is called Kindred Spirits: A Titanic Tale, coinciding with the 113th anniversary of the Titanic experience that happened. Help me welcome Nelson Aspen. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me. And in between the pages, my middle name is Page, actually.
Is it real? Oh my God! I don't think we ever had a page on In Between the Pages.
Yeah, my father was the first Nelson Page. I'm Nelson Page Jr. And then I think it was his father's best friend. That always seemed a little suspicious to me. My grandfather's best friend was named Jack Page, and that's why he named his son Nelson Page. And I'm Nelson Page. I have a sister, Leslie Page. I've got a few nieces named Page, and we always say, wah, 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 we've got enough pages to make a book. So that's why I stopped using my middle name.
But okay, it's okay. Wait. So you're a junior. So
I am just like you. You know, my family called me JR growing up. I was JR, and I went professionally by JR Aspen until I did a play in 1981 with Dallas star Patrick Duffy. And it was The Taming of the Shrew, and by William Shakespeare, that one. And Patrick Duffy, Christopher Walken was supposed to be playing Petruchio, but that whole thing with Natalie Wood happened.
Oh, yeah.
So Christopher Walken was suddenly not available to play Petruchio, and they got Patrick Duffy, which is the strangest recast in history. He went from Christopher Walken to Patrick Duffy. However, Patrick Duffy was a big star at the time on Dallas. So and of course, everybody was like, who shot JR? Who shot JR?
That's right.
People would meet me and I'd say, I'm JR Aspen. And they'd go, who shot you? And I'm like, it stopped being funny. So here comes Patrick Duffy, and he's meeting us in the cast. And I'm like, hello, I'm JR Aspen. And he looked at me with such disdain and it was the most insulting sneer anyone had ever fixed upon me. And I just, I'm a little teenager at that time. And he's a big famous TV star. And I was like, I put a curse on you, Patrick Duffy. And after like maybe 1 or 2 performances, Mr. Big Shot TV star lost his voice, and the understudy had to go on, there you go. Sorry, no hard feelings, but I also decided I'd start going by my first name.
Well, it's not your fault. You were called Jay because you're a junior. We get JR, we get Junior, we get all kinds of names for our name. That's just, we weren't trying to do anything disrespectful. I mean,
who shot you? And it wasn't like I could live with who shot you, but it was the look from Patrick Duffy, the look of absolute disgust, that thinking that I had named myself to cash in on Dallas. I was like, and you know who was the nicest guy on the planet was Larry Hagman.
I know, right?
The nicest guy. So I'm sure Patrick Duffy is a lovely guy now, and I hope that he and Linda Pearl are very happy baking their bread, because that's what they do now.
Oh my God, I love you. I do a Dallas after show with Hugh Dallas, so that's kind of fun. I'm glad that's
well. I'll tell you some Dallas shit you never knew.
Oh my God, I love it. I'll tell you on that show one day. But I did meet Linda Gray, and she was the best. Linda Gray was beautiful. She held my hand. I walked to her car. She called me honey and darling. Her handler was a dick, though. He was a total dick. And she was like, I'm okay. And she told him, I'm okay. I'm talking to a fan. And my was in the business already, but she's like, I'm talking to a fan. And I walked her to her car. I understand they have a job to do, too. I understand everybody has a job to do. I work in press. I know how that works. But he was so rude. And she was like, no, she wasn't having it. So like, thank you, Linda. You'll always have my.
You know, you get to a certain point. I started in show business at the age of 8, so that would be 1971, and it's not difficult to be nice. It's just
No,
not that hard.
it's not.
Uh, and it's amazing how many people find it hard. But if you just stick to your guns and stay nice, we all meet each other. All the nice people eventually meet each other.
We do. And I've done many red carpets and all kind of stuff. Because I know things have changed a little because of the COVIDs and all that stuff. But how do you handle back in the day the whole way when it comes to being a publicist for red carpet events? Because to me, those are the most chaotic things on earth. I'm just press. So I get my spot. They say, stand here. And it's chaotic for us. But I'm like, I watched the rest of you guys ushering people through and who's the. How'd you handle that stuff all those years? I don't know how.
Well, I was a reporter as well, but so I was producing and reporting for many years and probably thousands of red carpets. And I always say they're red because of all the blood spilled by journalists. That's why they're really red.
Yes.
COVID was the greatest thing to happen for me in terms of red carpets because. Then when you were doing them, you were limited. And I was like,
Yes.
You know what? I would love to be socially distant from you. Please stay 6 feet away from me. And then we started broadcast. I did a morning show 5 days a week for 20 years. And when COVID came along, started doing it through the telephone, which is how I'm talking to you now. And when COVID was finally over, I was so tired of having all this paraphernalia in my home. I gave up the green screen. I was like, you know what? Just deal with my home. But I gave up the green screen and I was like, it's time to go back to the studio. And they let me go back to the studio, so I could focus on my job and not the production and worrying about the sirens outside or who might come knocking at my door. And I just didn't want it in my house anymore. And I said, I'm going back to the studio. And it lasted for about a month. And they got the bill from the studio rental. And they had sort of forgotten what it costs to rent a studio for your television show every day. And they said, well, you've got to go back home. They were used to not paying for that.
I know.
And I said, you know what? It's been a wonderful 20 years. It's time for me to do other things. And it's a big leap into the unknown. And I just, what are you going to do? I started writing. And you write about what you know. I did my memoirs. And one turned into 2. One was popular enough to spawn a sequel. And the third one will come out later this year. And I think that should sufficiently cover my life. But it's called Dancing Between the Raindrops. And it's a 3-book series, 2 of which you can get. They're filthy. I learned everything, but because it's a true story. That's why. But I learned everything about the dirty novel writing from Jackie Collins, because one of my many survival jobs in my youth, I worked at a Borders bookstore on La Cienega Boulevard.
I know that one.
Right across. I think it's a pet store now or something.
Yeah,
it's right across from the Beverly Center. And I was working in there one day and a limousine pulled up outside and out came Jackie Collins with a notepad. And she strode into Borders, went over to the fiction wall and started writing down inventory. And then she marched over to the manager and she let the manager know what titles were low, what needed to be restocked. And then she went back into her limo. Flash forward a few years later, I was interviewing her. I had a chat show. She was a guest on the chat show. And I would run into her in green rooms and interview situations often because she loved press. So I would run into her often. And I would always tell her how impressed I was by her as a businesswoman. Yeah. Yes, she was glitzy and glamorous and sexy and flirty, but she was also a brilliant marketer and taught me if you want to sell your books, you've got to always have one within an arm's reach. You've got to be willing to take cash for it or Venmo. Get your hands dirty. Give me the cash. I'll buy you dinner, but you got to buy a book. You gotta sell the books. And I miss her. She was terrifically entertaining. She makes it okay. She and Sidney Sheldon, who would create I Dream of Jeannie.
Yes, I know.
Sidney Sheldon wrote those kinds of books as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
I mean, you
What
think
happened?
about how kinky is the whole genie idea.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
Yeah, I know.
master. Here's
Yes.
this little slave coming out of the bottle for the master, right? That's a little twisted right there, Sydney. So my books are full of adult situations. Even the new one about the Titanic. My defense is: are you telling me no one had sex on the Titanic? Of course they had sex on the Titanic. Even Kate and Leo had sex on the
Yeah,
Titanic down in the cargo hold.
yeah, they did. Well, this book is okay. Oh my god, I can listen to you all day long. My god, yes, my stories. I gotta read your books first. I gotta read those books. All right. So, oh my god, so many things. Okay, number one. When I saw this, I heard that it's a fantasy mixed in with some stuff in there, and your own metaphysical stuff that you're going to too. I loved it. I was like, oh my god, I love this idea of the Titanic had a million stories, right? They must have a million stories on there. We only saw a couple in the movie, but that's all we saw. So like, there must be other stories. So why not create one that's plausible to me? I think it's plausible.
Well, it's was intended to be a true story until my publisher said, "Look, you've already done your memoirs that were set in the 80s and 90s, so don't make this about you." Nelson, this Titanic book doesn't have to be about you, but it is my true story of my connection to an obscure passenger on the Titanic. You know, you hear people say, "Oh, I'm reincarnated from Cleopatra. I'm reincarnated from Henry VIII." You know, nobody's ever reincarnated from the schmuck out on the street.
Yeah.
I found over the course of 50 plus years, through a series of dreams and coincidences, and this is before the internet, so it wasn't like something I just cooked up on Google. The things happened to me, and I figured out it took a long time. It wasn't until the early 80s. I was at a bookstore in the South Street Seaport, and I knew I had a connection through the dreams and people calling me Milton, but I never knew who Milton was. And I found this obscure book about the Titanic, and it was a new book. You know, you didn't have Amazon to order a book on. You actually had to go to bookstores. And there was this person, Milton Long from Worcester, Massachusetts. We don't know a lot about him. As time has gone on and Google has come into the consciousness, I found out everything there is possible to know available about Milton. But I wanted to tell my relationship story. And since they didn't want the book to be about me, I created a contemporary historical fiction about this reincarnation. And I don't necessarily believe in that mumbo jumbo kind of stuff, but it happened to me. So the book is my story. I've just fictionalized it for the sake of story. And Milton, who perished aboard the Titanic and never really got his shot at life because he was only 29. So you've got this repressed Edwardian fellow who died too young, and we know he was lost in the world because he went to Harvard and Columbia but never graduated. He was wealthy, and he got on Titanic after being alone on holiday in San Moritz doing the winter sports. So why was he alone in? It's sad. And I'm so not alone. I'm surrounded by people. I'm an extrovert. I have an amazing life. But why is he, of all people, part of me? So I created an odd couple situation. You got the repressed, uptight guy, and then you got the flamboyant, extroverted guy, two souls in the same body who have to solve a mystery about what happened to his unrequited love from 1912. And the travels take us all around the party scene of modern Manhattan. So there you go. You get your Jackie Collins-esque naughty moments in there, your adult situations. And it time travels between 1912. So I don't know what the real finish. Well, I know what the finish was, but I don't know before that what happened to Milton. So I give him a backstory, and then I try to honor him And all the Titanic, not just the Titanic victims, but the people who survived Titanic. It was such a cataclysmic, world-changing, awful event that nobody had a happy ending. The people that made it home after that tragedy had terrible survivor's guilt. They had terrible post-traumatic stress. It was not like, oh, well, we lived, so now we can go ahead and have some fun. Most people that survived Titanic did not live happily ever after. So I feel like I wanted to honor the Titanic community, because we Titaniacs
That's
are
it.
a close bunch. And yeah, it's a fun story for Titaniacs, obviously, but it's also it's an unrequited love story. And if you believe a little bit in the metaphysical, that's a bonus.
Yeah. No, I know it's beautiful, and I love that you're like, we're gonna make it gay because it's your story. You're like, it has to be some gay people on the ship, and so, I mean, why not?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because there were other male couples aboard the Titanic. And Milton, I have no idea whether or not he was gay, but I have to create a lot of what ifs about his life. And the fact that he was 29 in 1912 and wasn't married is unusual. And that he was traveling alone is it's kind of sad. And he was a man of means, but he really did nothing. But even his death certificate said gentleman of leisure. That was his occupation. And having studied at two different Ivy League schools, that doesn't seem to add up to me. So I got to do a little detective work in addition to imagination.
You're my second recently interview with somebody doing historical fiction fantasy. I'm gonna ask you the same question I asked this person. Um, how easy or hard was it to do that? Because you're not writing, because you're saying they don't want it to be about you personally, but you're adding you in directly into the character situations. How did that work for you?
Well, I made myself a tremendously dashing and handsome and hilarious protagonist of also of 29 years of age. So
Yes.
I did get to go back to my youth.
Yeah.
It is very difficult. I have this is my ninth book, but it's my first historical fantasy. And luckily, thank God, my publisher assigned me a very talented 30-year-old. I mean, no accidents, again with the age
Yeah.
thing. Um, uh, an editor, 30-year-old editor, who specializes, his expertise lies in historical fantasy. And he taught me so much, because he's like, look, if you're going to create this universe, this world of yours, you have to establish the rules and boundaries and how this world works. And you can't break from it. Like if Milton is going to talk to me, you have to have very clear ways in which he can communicate with you. Yeah. Does he only talk to you through the mirror, like that Lily Tomlin movie or whatever that was? Remember All of Me with Steve
Yes,
Martin and
I
Lily
do.
Tomlin?
I do.
You know, if you're going to create a magical situation, you got to stick with it. You can't break your own rules for the sake of a story, or you'll get called out on it, and it won't make sense. So I was really lucky, not only that I had an editor who helped me navigate creating that situation, but that he was a 30-year-old, and I'm writing the character as 29 years old. And I like to think I'm hip with everything, but he would often say, that's not how a 30-year-old would talk, or, really, like, you got to tweak this, and that's not exactly how it would go down. And it was a godsend. And I'm so proud of the book. And I find it's funny, it's sexy, it's got a mystery, it's got heartbreak, it's got a ghost story that is inadvertent just by virtue of the fact that one of my leading men is dead. And it's a story that there were so many people, as you say, aboard the Titanic, but
Yeah.
we only know Molly
John
Brown
Astor.
or
Yeah.
Thomas Andrews or John Jacob Astor.
Yeah.
So this is a character that has not been exploited,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word, and I wanted to tell it hasn't been represented. I wanted to tell a gay Titanic story,
Yeah.
and hence Kindred Spirits, a Titanic tale, and I think it's very touching.
Yeah. No, I love that. To me, I love it. I just think, why not? I don't see. Somebody may say why, and I go, why not? To me, it's the opposite. It's like, well, why not? I mean, like, we've been around forever. It wasn't like we weren't there back then. It was a different setup situation, obviously, but we were around then too.
I had one reviewer say that part of the fun of it for him was like, it made me wonder what it would be like if Grindr was on Titanic. So there you go. They
Yeah,
wouldn't have wanted to rope off the third class then.
I know. I have that's another story. Yes, no, I do. In all seriousness, I do love hearing about the people who aren't famous. I love stories you hear about somebody seemingly random, but nobody's random. Everybody's a person. Like somebody, you go, oh, the dishwasher had a whole life. I mean, everyone had a life. Everyone had a life.
The last person off the Titanic, and real Titanic diehards will know this already, but as the ship was going down, and they sort of hinted at this in James Cameron's movie, and in the film A Night to Remember, it's more prominently shown. The baker, the ship's baker, made it to the very top of the ship, and he had helped other people get on the lifeboats and get to, deck chairs to float on. But he made it to the very end of the ship, and as it slipped underneath the waves, the baker, the ship's baker, who would have thought the baker would survive? He literally stepped off the ship and into the water. And when they picked him up in a lifeboat, his hair wasn't even wet. He had gone down with the ship and didn't even get his hair wet and lived to tell the tale.
That's amazing. What got you to Titanic?
The Poseidon Adventure, my all-time favorite movie.
Yes.
When there's my Poseidon tattoo.
Oh my goodness, I love it.
I took the movie very seriously. Something I saw it in the theaters for the first time in December of 1971, and it changed my life because I was so captivated with disaster at sea. And it wasn't until I started having the dreams, my recurring dream, while it was not scary, was exactly mirroring how Milton Long died, which I didn't find out for 30 years.
Yeah.
So there are no coincidences. But I ended up becoming great pals with several members of the cast of Poseidon Adventure, and would go during my LA years on the Poseidon circuit of the screenings and the autograph shows. And Carol Lindley, who played the singer that sang The Morning After, she was my closest pal, and we were very, very close until her death in 2019. And we would end up in the strangest situations through the Poseidon world. It's like any cult film. It has its own cast of characters.
I have to interject for a second. I have to ask you, did you know Shelley Winters?
Shelley came to a few of those events, but she was in delicate health by then. But I used to see Shelley, and I'm going to blank on the name of it, but I bet you know. There was a diner on Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood where she would hold court with her pals.
Yes.
It was right in West Hollywood, not far from Merrick's. It was a diner right there.
Oh yeah. Yes.
If you said the name, I'd remember.
I know. Yeah, I'm actually kind of picturing it, the inside. Right
I don't think it's there anymore.
No, it's gone. No, it's gone now. But
she was always out and about, and she was something. She was a force of nature. But in most of my time, a lot of my time was spent with Carol. But through Carol, I made friends with Stella Stevens, Roddy McDowell, Pamela Sue Martin, Ernest Borgnine, peripherally Red Buttons. Red and Carol weren't so close, even though they ended up together in the film. And Ronald Neame, who was the director, who was so amazing. And I feel like I had the distinction of being probably, I may be wrong, but I think I was probably the last guy Roddy McDowell felt up before he died.
I would take that with honor.
But that was at a screening of the Poseidon Adventure, and I was sitting in between Carol Lindley and Roddy McDowell, and there's the scene, spoiler alert, where Roddy's character dies. He
Yeah.
plunges down the shaft into the churning water, and we all knew it was coming, and we're all watching the film, and he falls off the ladder and he goes down, and Roddy calls out, "Bye bye!" And as he did, his hand hit my thigh and went a little too far up. But I thought, let him give it a shot.
My things, I said, I with honor, I would take it with honor. Like, okay, thank you. I mean, thank you.
And he and Carol did a TV movie in the late '70s with Myrna Loy and James Farentino, and it was called The Elevator. It was a TV disaster movie where they get stuck in the elevator. So not an expensive movie to make. They get stuck in the elevator of a high rise. So I'm at a Poseidon Adventure screening with Carol and Roddy and a bunch of the others, and we're all, and it was at the Beverly Connection.
Oh yeah, Beverly Connection. Right across.
And you take the elevator down to the screening rooms. Yes. So we're in one of those cramped little elevators, and I'm squeezed in between Carol and Roddy, and probably Stella Stevens and Ernie Borgnine and Sheila Allen, Irwin Allen's widow, and we're all in there. And you know how you look straight ahead when you're in an elevator. Right. Nobody looks anywhere else. You just look straight ahead. Right. We're all looking ahead, and Roddy says to Carol, "What was that movie we did with Myrna Loy?" And I'm thinking, it was called The Elevator, and we are all
the elevator. We're in an elevator. Right.
He couldn't remember the name, and she couldn't either. Like, bless her heart, she was like, "Oh, I don't know," because they did like 20 movies together, and they'd run into each other in hair and makeup at Fantasy Island, and Roddy'd be like, "You again?" But yeah. So anyway, the elevator.
I love it
with Myrna Loy.
I gotta find it because Myrna Loy. I'm a Thin Man series person, so William Powell, Myrna Loy. I mean, I was at the whole series. I love her, love them. So I gotta find this. I just wrote down The Elevator. I've never before in my life.
Yep, and James Farentino.
Who was hot back in the day.
Yeah.
He was.
He was trouble. He was trouble.
I love it. Oh, I do. I got such all day. I got to switch gears. I get this to all. I love all these stories. I want to listen to all your stories. I'm like, screw the book. Just all the stories.
Oh, please don't screw the book.
I love all these stories. Well, here's the thing. So the book came out in February.
The new one, the Kindred Spirits.
Yeah.
It just came out. It's brand new. It just came out it was just available last week. So it's brand new.
So the book is out now. So I'm saying, someone like you, who is a multi-hyphenate, and I can relate to that. I love that. When somebody comes and says, okay, we're going to talk about your book and all the ins and outs, but you do have all these other greats. I mean, it must be, do you find people have a hard time interviewing you or like to stay, because like, you're such a great interview also. And so it's like, there's so many things going on.
Yeah. If the journalist like yourself allows me to go off on tangents, I'm all for it. So, and I do, I always say I'm 1 degree of separation from all things show business. So you can just drop anything in my lap and I can go with it. And there's also, that's a skill you perfect over years of doing live television. Like, okay, I'm talking about the death of Farrah Fawcett, and then in my ear they're saying, stop talking about Farrah Fawcett, Michael Jackson just died. Like, as I'm talking about
Was that crazy?
Farrah Fawcett passed away, sadly, of anal cancer, and I'm trying to wrap my brain around saying anal on morning television. And they're screaming in my ear, stop talking about it, Michael Jackson just died. And I wasn't going to say that until I had some concrete evidence. I wasn't just going to say Michael Jackson died I knew it. And they're wheeling in closed caption TVs because it was before we had the internet in our hands.
Yes.
And so like and they kept me on the air for 7 hours as the story of Michael Jackson unfolded. They're like, just stay in the chair. My bladder was nearly burst, but I was able to keep talking. And I have no other talent if not the ability to just keep talking.
I love it. I can relate to you so much. I used to work at AfterBuzz TV, and we did live television all the time. And I told you all the time, for me, live is easier than recording sometimes. I'm,
Oh, I
I'm
don't want to do a second take. I could never be a film actor because I would be bored out of my mind sitting around all day to say the same one line 12 different ways. No, if I make a mistake, move on. Let's go.
yes. Well, actually, I'm asking you this question because I people ask this question to me all the time too. What do you think one of the skills you need to have as a live TV presenter?
The gift of gab. I mean, you have to be able to talk. One of my early mentors, when I first moved to New York in 1980, and I lived on the Upper West Side, where the morning show with Regis and Kathy Lee recorded every day. Excuse me. And so I would go to the tapings because I was a struggling young actor, and I would watch Regis Philbin with such admiration because he was able to look in the camera and talk to the audience, listen in his ear to the producer, talk to his co-host when he could get a word in, address the in-studio audience, and he could multitask like nobody I had ever seen before, all while being entertaining and switched on and performing. So he was producing and performing and writing, and he had a sense of time. You've got to have a sense of time. And I thought, that's what I want to do. That is what I want to do. And I got to do it for 30 years in morning television. And I don't miss that daily grind, but I still get to exercise those muscles in situations like this. By the way, our time is almost up. So, so it is great to be able to do that, and that helped me enormously in my career, learning from Regis.
Yeah, were they at West 66 yet? Were they over there yet? That studio? Yeah, I think it was.
Oh yeah, it was on the corner of 66th and Columbus, and
I've been there. I've been there.
they
Yeah,
sadly just they all relocated now.
I
ABC
know.
sold, so you can look forward to the whole neighborhood being high-rise condos.
Yeah. I love that area. I've been to that studio many times back in the past. You know, I do the soaps. So I did Wife to Live and All My Children. So I was like, I used to go to West 66. I missed that. Um,
I'll tell you a quick story about West 66.
Please,
So
I love it. Please.
I worked on every East Coast based New York City soap opera during the 80s. I
Like
went
Patty
through,
White.
I worked on every single one. And after working at One Life to Live, actually, the cover of Dancing Between the Raindrops, that's a portrait that was done of me at One Life to Live by the art director at One Life. I was up on the wall with Erica Slezak and
Yeah.
James, what's his name, DePaiva,
Oh yeah, James Meyer.
and
Yes.
yeah, all the gang. But I met one of my best friends while working at One Life to Live, an actress named Luann Gideon, who I helped get onto Search for Tomorrow, and she was on Search for Tomorrow till the end of that show, and we stayed friends after New York. We both were living in LA, and she sadly passed away right after my 50th birthday. The last time I saw her was at my 50th birthday party. I had it out in the Hamptons, and she flew in from North Carolina to come to my 50th. And I knew the last time I saw her, we sort of had in hindsight, a premonition that was our last time to see each other. And sure enough, it was. And maybe a year later, her husband, her widower, sent me a package, and I opened the package, and it was like a little shampoo bottle full of ashes. And he had given away her ashes as souvenirs to her friends.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, I do not want this on my desk. This will depress me. It will creep me out. Where am I going to put Luann?
Yeah.
So, and I tell the story in one of my books. And I thought, well, we met at the One Life to Live studio on West 66, which was the castle-like building.
Yes.
Dark Shadows used to be there.
Yeah.
And now it was One Life to Live. And I thought, and it was a cold February night. And I thought, I'll just get the subway. I'll get out of the subway at Lincoln Center, and I'll just go dump Luann on West 66th Street. And then I had taken her for lunch. The day I met her, I was so besotted with her that I invited her to lunch. I don't know who I thought I was, this teenager big shot. I'll buy you a hamburger. So the little around the corner from that place was Nick and Tony's. And I thought, I'll dump Luann on the street. Then I'll go have a martini in her honor at Nick and Tony's, where, where we had our first lunch all those years ago. And, it's illegal to dump ashes in New York City.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Yeah.
but it was just this teeny little bottle.
Like
but it was like Heinz ketchup. It wouldn't come out. And I'm doing this on the snowy snowbanks of I'm like, I don't know if it was a bone fragment or whatever it is that clogs up the bottle.
Oh my God.
But finally, it all came out in one big flump, just like flump, right there in the snowbank. And I was like, now I need that martini.
Yes.
So, rest in peace, Luann. One big piece.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh my God. Do you know Alan Locker?
Oh, the locker room. Yeah.
But
I never worked with him. I never worked with him.
But again, we're both 1 degree. I know him; he's my buddy. So, all right. As we wrap, because I can talk to you forever. As we wrap, but you know how podcasts. I didn't want 5-hour podcasts.
That's all right. You know what? We'll do another one. It's all right. I've always got something to promote.
Yeah, no, I want you to come back.
Actually, Kindred Spirits.
Yes.
The book.
Yes.
Okay. So last year I did a cabaret show, a Tony Bennett, a tribute, because I had done an amazing at-home interview with Tony Bennett specifically about his painting. And when he passed away, I was like, I have this gem of an interview. So I created a Tony Bennett tribute show where I didn't try to imitate him, no one could, but I would sing his arrangements. And so I would intermix songs with stories about him, and then clips of our interview at home where he said the most insightful, wonderful things. I won 3 Broadway World Cabaret Awards for that. Best Tribute, Best Jazz Vocal, thank you, and Best Show. So this year, I was like, they're going to expect me, I won, so they're going to expect me to do something musical this year, although I don't really have time or interest in doing something musical this year. I'm busy with Kindred Spirits. But I thought, I'll do Kindred Spirits, the cabaret, where I will tell a few Milton Long stories, tell a few Titanic stories, sing. I'll choose some of my repertoire that's appropriate to that, and sell a few books after the show. Signed copies make great gifts. So I'll sing a little. Maybe I'll get a nomination. So that's coming up in July. So I'll come back before July and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I'm mesmerized already. And if I have to, I'm gonna come to New York to see it. I want to come see it.
Yes, come to New York. I'll be actually, you're in Los Angeles, so I'm coming to Los Angeles for the anniversary of to commemorate Titanic sinking. Yes. Which is April. It hit the berg on April 14th, and it sank on April 15th. Yep. So the weekend before, April 11th, 12th, I'll be on the Queen Mary in Long Beach for Titanic weekend, with other authors, historians, people from the films. And then April 15th, I hope you will join me if you're available. April 15th, I'll be at the Four Seasons Hotel on Doheny Drive in Beverly Hills. I think it's from 4 to 6. You have to check my website. 4 to 6. Signing books. We'll have some drinks. You might see a few famous faces while you're there. And then I start a world tour, and I'm going to different cities around the country and finishing in London and the birthplace of Titanic, Belfast, Ireland. So I'm on the move.
Yeah, he is. And they have TitanicWeekend.com, or you go to his website and we do it also. But yeah, so I'm trying to come to one of these because I'm here in LA and Long Beach is like 2 minutes away from me.
I'll warn you now. I'm shorter in person. I'm just telling you. But as my mother always says, it's all the same horizontally.
I always say the same thing too, because what she always say when you lay down, you're all the same, or in the dark. Looks like mine. I've had a few of those. So the end of Titanic anniversary weekend is April 12th through 14th. The actual anniversary is Tuesday the 15th in the Lobby Lounge. I'll put stuff in the description so you guys can go.
Yay!
You have to meet him, folks. You guys in person. I want to meet him in person, so I'm going to go. And also, lastly, giving birth to this when you've done a bunch of books. Does it get nerve-wracking? Are you excited? When you release a product to the world? How does it feel after all these times?
Do I look bored? No, man. And I've always got the next one in mind. I guess I'll worry if I don't have the next one. And I swear, when you're having, when you're struggling with something, you're like, never again, never again. And I'll tell my husband, don't ever let me do this again. Don't ever let me do that again. And he very sweetly, the very next time I do something like that I swore I wasn't going to do, he'll say, he's like, tap, tap, tap. You tap tap tap. You asked me to just remind you that and I'm like, I know.
I love it. I do. Nelson, you're amazing. And again, the book is called Kindred Spirits, Titanic Tale. I'll put it in the description, folks. So you can go directly, take a link, and
Thank
just go
you.
right there. We want to sell this book.
It's worth it. It's only $17. The Kindle's $8.99.
Yeah, it's not expensive at all, and you get a fun story in the middle of it with some historical context. I like that.
I like to write books, I say, that you can put down. You can read a chapter, or you can read it all in one sitting, or you can, put it on the back of the John, put it by the bed, put it in the car while you're waiting. You're a little bit, a chapter here, a chapter there.
Yes. Do it. Thank you, Nelson, for being on my show. You're amazing.
You are too. Thank you so much for your hospitality.
So it's in between pages on Facebook. I'm James Lott Jr. I'm everywhere where James Lott Jr.'s are, including TikTok. I'm all over the place. Just type in my name. You can find me. I did it on purpose. Just James Lott Jr. everywhere across the board. I have books too. They're on Amazon. You can check them out also. Support writers. Support indie artists. Support the press and freedom of it. Support entertainment. We're going through a different time right now these days. So I tell everybody, this is just as important as anything else. It's been shown that artistry is good for math and sciences and history and English and everything. It's just as important for development and for mental health and physical health. So support the arts. I always say this at the end of these shows, but I really mean it. We are at a crossing point right now when it comes to the arts. Support the arts. Support the indie artists also. I'm James Lott Jr. We'll talk to you next time.